Hey Brian, I got your question about the timing for the melody on Amazing Grace, and I mean I can show you an easy way to play it, but I've got a bigger point to make that I think is kind of the bigger deal here, and it's kind of why we intentionally don't get deep into that. But here we are. You were talking about the Amazing Grace. It's on page 12 of what is this Course 2 book, and how you know when the melody note goes with the chord, right? And before we were just playing, solid chords and playing a melody. And I was always telling you to try to play it like you'd sing it or you'd hum it, or it's a tune you already know. You just may not have played it on a piano before. So it'd be, But if you used the rules that I was always telling you, which was, play it the way you want, you may have played it that way the first time, but maybe the second time you played, right? Or maybe you were noodling around, right? So now the question becomes, okay, well, that's okay when I was holding my chord solid, but what if I'm starting to play this pattern? So in this class, we were talking about splitting the chord just as a very simple pattern to play, right? So we were just splitting a chord into three, quarter notes, right? So it'd be, to sing grace, and then for the E minor, how sweet the sound. Right, so we were just taking that chord and splitting it up. So that's a pattern that you really kind of just need to get on autopilot. And you said, well, yeah, but Scott, how I'm struggling with the hand coordination thing of knowing when to play the melody. Well, a traditional way I could teach you that is, and it's not a bad way to do it the very first time, I suppose, is to say, well, let's start, counting, right? So we'll say there's 3 of these per measure. So when you're looking at that notation, you say, and then you have to play those top 2 notes. Now, is that because they're written in there? No, it's because that's what the melody is, right? And you already knew the melody before. So if you were singing along with this, I would encourage you to try to do that. Listen, Amazing Grace, how sweet. So you could say, oh, well, that's probably a way I could identify where it's supposed to go, right? Amazing. That's where that happens, right? So you play 1, and then these 2, right? And you just could do it slow enough that you just figure out, well, where is that falling? But again, I think I'm slowly working around backwards to the point I'm trying to make, which is figure it out based on the fact you already know the melody in your head, by ear, right? You don't have to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, and that would be one way to do it because there's some eighth notes, and I don't even want to get into that. That is the way you would have to do it if you were trying to play it exactly as notated. But we never want to play it exactly as notated, right? That's back to this old, we're talking about the noodling and whatever it is. So I think it's kind of a fallacy to try to count something and perfect where one comes down with another when you're just playing a tune like this. And somebody could argue back and say, yeah, but when you're playing some, like a bossa nova rhythm, those things have specific parts. But when you're just playing a tune, I don't think you should try to count it real well, because what you really want to do is have the freedom to be able to play that melody differently every time you play it. So the real goal, now that I finally gotten to it, is to get yourself on autopilot so you're not freaking out trying to get the left hand played. So it would just be, just play just the chords by themselves, the chord changes in whatever pattern you're doing, Sing grace, there's an E minor, how sweet the sound, right? Just get so comfortable. Do, do, do. Do, do, do. You may want to do that, right? Ba-ba. So just get to the point that that is so on autopilot, and you just need to do it a little while is how you accomplish that. That then you have the freedom, which is really playing, not just regurgitating, a really kind of a corny, hokey version of Amazing Grace, to turn it into real music. You want to have the freedom to maybe the first time play just like it's written, right? But then the second time around, maybe you want to play right? And the second time, I had the ability to do that because I know, and I was trying to imitate something that I would whistle or I would sing or I would hum. I wasn't focused on counting a melodic line, perfectly as far as how it's notated, because I realized that the whole purpose of that notation in a lead sheet is just as a guide. It's not really meant to be played verbatim. So, as long as you're following the chord changes, you can noodle around with the melody a little bit. And I know it's kind of hard to bring that back to a very beginning level sometimes, but don't think that the win is to play this. Excuse me, sorry. Dun, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and because I don't ever really expect, and I'm sure you really don't want to, play something that straight and stilted and hokey sounding anyway, right? So there's my answer to your question in a very long-winded roundabout way to get back to get really used to just playing these patterns in your left hand, and then you're free to just do that kind of an autopilot and focus on what you really want to focus on, which is not playing the melody exactly the same way every time. Noodle it, but play it like you would sing it, like we talked about last time, the sliding up into notes, or, pretend you're singing and trying to bend into it on the piano. So there you go. Hope that helps. Bye-bye.